Hello and welcome to Dual Credit U.S. History B Discussion Board Lesson 17. Okay, this discussion talks about President Kennedy and about how he felt about civil rights, which is pretty interesting, I think, and definitely something to consider. Okay, so document A is JFK's acceptance speech. This is an excerpt from his acceptance speech delivered on July 15th, 1960 at the Democratic National Convention. This is not an emergency. And he talks about the rights of man and and he talks about the civil and economic rights of man and how he sees the rights of man, which is kind of interesting. Document B is Kennedy's televised address, which is given on June 11th, 1963. The purpose of this speech was to explain and promote a civil rights bill that would outlaw racial discrimination in all public facilities and services, protecting African American rights and giving the federal government greater power to enforce school desegregation and to punish employers for racial discrimination. Now realize these were in the 1960s, so this is kind of in the very thick of the civil rights movement, okay? And then document C is from the Detroit Tribune in 1962, and it is a this article appears in the Detroit Tribune. Civil rights leaders had called for Kennedy administration to prohibit discrimination in public housing, but President Kennedy was slow to act. President Kennedy signed an executive order banning discrimination in federal funding housing 7 months later. And Dr. Martin Luther King criticized Kennedy for not being quick to act in that situation. Document D is John Lewis's speech, modified. This is an excerpt from a speech in the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee. John Lewis planned to deliver on the March on Washington in August of 1963. Leaders of the march, including Dr. Martin Luther King, were concerned that parts of Lewis's speech were too forceful, and they convinced Lewis to remove some passages before he delivered it, including his criticism of the Kennedy administration civil rights bill and his suggestions that civil rights advocates would march through the South like General Sherman, who destroyed the southern cities and plantations during the Civil War. So that was very controversial. Document F, oh my goodness, is from the Detroit Tribune, 1961. This article appears in the Detroit Tribune on December 30th, 1961. This article, like Document C, is discussing the delay of a bill to prohibit discrimination in federal funded housing. So there we go. And then here are some questions based on Document A and B. What was JFK a strong supporter of civil rights? Was JFK a strong supporter of civil rights? Why or why not? Based on documents C and D, was he a strong supporter of civil rights? Why or why not? Based on documents E and F, was he a strong supporter of civil rights for Americans? And what do you think was his overall stance for civil rights for African Americans? And do you think it might have changed had he been able to stay in office for a longer amount of time? Okay, so please answer these with complete sentences for each question. And I will talk to you later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.